Hey there, everyone. Tyler's got something to say. Oh boy, it's been too long since we did one of these.
Yeah.
One of these sort of implies that it's like there's quite a few, but this is actually episode 2, or even if because episode 1 was called the pilot anyway, and sometimes people refer to the pilot as like the 0th episode. Is that even a word? Zeroth.
Even though that was covering update 2, because there isn't actually update 1 on here.
So now it's episode 2 covering update 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, pure chaos.
Or episode 1, if that pilot does count as 0, covering update 3. Point is, beards.
Yeah, am I supposed to? Do I have to read the? I think I do.
I think that's how you should.
Yeah. Do I? Because okay. For some bizarre reason, we managed to remove the beards in the previous release. It's hard to think of a worse fate for a dwarf. Beards should be central to this game, so we are talking about adding features where players can customise their beards. Heck, maybe we'll even do procedurally generated beards someday. And Update 3 Beards was April 7th, 2017, which this game has actually been publicly available for more than 5 years, which is horrifying because it feels so new still to me.
Yeah.
Even though we've been playing it for 4 years, which is that's even scarier actually.
Yeah, time. Could you cut it out? Point is, yeah, this is going to be about beards, and well, to say that if you want to scroll down to patch notes, we won't sit on it for a bit, but like beards are really kind of a note, like kind of there. There's a little other things, but obviously they focused on the beards being the main part, and I do want to talk about that first thing. So it seems like
our most requested feature, beards are in.
Yeah, it seems like this is when they added the ability to use other beards other than probably what they had on the default looks of the characters.
I assume the implication there is also that they were all completely fixed in appearance at this point still.
Yeah.
But also not exactly like how they should look either, if we see the second point.
The title also implies that they didn't even have beards, which is kind of weird. But yeah, this is when they became true dwarfs and the beard customization. But I do want to kind of talk about the sadly abandoned idea that they mentioned there of procedurally generated beards.
Yeah, but how would that even work at all in any, like, what the hell?
I don't know.
Complete nonsense.
It would have been, I don't know, the same as the procedurally generated caves. They create a bunch of presets that can just kind of form stuff.
Brilliant.
Like, I don't know, like there's like a gilded center piece, or like an armored center, and then point is,
I'm gonna hide the face cam because it's just getting in the way. What I should have done is moved it to the other side because it would actually be fine there, but I can't do that now. Sorry about that, everyone.
Point is, we lost procedurally generated beards, but this was so early on that I'm not that surprised.
Well, what they would have meant by that, though, is it would have been a way for them to create beards automatically.
Probably,
not for the game to create beards for us. It would be to create for them to
put in. I don't know that.
No, because it would basically come up with random beards that they would probably choose to put in the game. I think that's probably the idea.
I don't think that's what that implies. But then again, it doesn't really matter what it implies because they obviously abandoned it, which is fair enough. I mean, it's not fair enough, but it's also fair enough. So many things are probably cut in the early bits of this game that the idea of procedurally generated beards is not that wild. But I think we should probably move on.
Well, yeah, I mean, second point is not particularly interesting. Dwarf outfits are tweaked to match key art. Well, I don't know what the key art was at this time. I assume by that they mean sort of the cover art almost. Because there was a point, and when the driller was just like a big mech, basically, and he never looked like that in game, I can tell you that. So I assume they were already past that. Either way, it's not particularly relevant considering how different you can make your dwarves look now. So, good work with that. But I would still like to know exactly what the differences were. At that point.
Yeah. There isn't like a a throwback machines where you could like play the game at an earlier save, is there? Like, that's not really a thing. in most
No,
games.
no, DLG Historian's got access to like all the builds, but that's because he's like tight.
Yeah.
I don't know what he did to gain their such favour. There's still things that he's not allowed to touch, but still,
Right.
it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Updated icons. Who
for
cares?
dwarves and gear. It seems like this was just a bit of a cosmetics, not really overhaul, but like revamp. At least those ones are. I actually like some of these. New status effect and affliction systems means we can make stuff like webbing slowing and fire burning effects more easily. So this is basically them adding status effects, right? Like,
Well, it's immediately followed up by what they actually did to those two examples. First of all, the web fitter at this point is the shooting spider, which I love. And it now shoots a web that slows and impairs the vision of the player. So I assume, at this point then, well, I know that the menace wasn't in the game at this point because that was from a later update. I think that might be in the Horrors of Hoxie's update. But in this case, I think they didn't have web spitters or acid spitters. They just had this guy that just shot you.
It's pretty wild that like web spitters are one of the oldest like things in the game. I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, web spitters really are like very obscure because they're not grunts and they're not acid spitters, and they're just so frail at the same time. But they're like grunt size too. There's something about them that I find really, just really fascinating. Their position in the game because they're sort of just.
They feel like elders. Like they're just kind of older and frailer than like everyone else. Like,
but yeah, they're sort of the grunt of the spitters, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then you don't really have a guard, I suppose. You've got the web spitter, you've got the slasher acid spitter, you've got the praetorian, and then we would have had the glyphid acid spitter queen.
Was that a thing?
Yeah. It's like a very old boss enemy that they were working on. DLG Historian has tried many times to find. It just crashed this game though, and it's basically. I think it is just the precursor to the menace. So that's the thing.
All right. Yeah.
Either way, taking control away from the player was a very early idea, and was very much so expanded upon. Thank you.
Slowing down is not that bad. It's annoying though, and most bits aren't that debilitating, but flamethrower can now light enemies and the environment on fire. Not to mention other dwarves. Pretty wild that there was a point in time where it didn't do that.
Yeah, because they basically added the status effect. It was just damage at this point.
Yeah, they're all just different forms of damage.
Actually, it might be more visual, although also it implies the introduction of not just the main status effect, but also sticky flames. Came from that, I suppose. So that wasn't a thing before. The flamethrower, right? Maybe this has something to do with why it's like, in such a weird position for us, because it went through a lot. It went through a lot of shit, right? Not only did it get doubled, it just like basically every way, because it was just too weak. It also there was a point where it was just it was so half baked for so long, and it sort of just became what it is over time. And because all the other weapons at the time were much more simple as well. And all the weapons that came out afterwards were more fully formed on release. So, oh, fuck me.
Yeah.
Huh?
Go.
What? Interruption.
Yeah.
Anyway, any final thoughts on the flamethrower? Will we bury it?
Well, I feel like we should probably talk about that because I don't want to spoil the future, but wasn't there an update that was basically purely based on making Driller as good as the other characters?
There might have been.
Yeah, so I think we'll go into that then.
All right. Okay. What's next? Improved enemy spawn systems means more dynamic enemy encounter and ways. Now, I wish this point was more detailed because we don't know exactly what parts of that actually entails. Is that like when they introduce things like Praetorian hordes or Swarmer hordes? I don't know.
I don't think that at all. I think that is literally adding like maybe swarms or like the semi-swarms, whatever they are.
Ambushes.
Ambushes, yeah. Like, I think it's probably more those than
improved enemy spawn systems. So maybe I'm thinking perhaps maybe they weren't actually,
or maybe like where they come from, stuff like that.
Possibly. Or that maybe there weren't even just enemies waiting at any point. Maybe it was all hordes at this point, all swarms.
Yeah.
Either way, I mean, swarms themselves are actually something that we, to be fair, never really had like a problem with the way that they're handled. You know what I mean? I've never been like, I've never had an issue with like, I don't know. It sounds odd, but I've never really thought about just the way that swarms are done. It's just always felt just as it should be. So that's something that they got right pretty early on, it seems. So good on them. That's just nonsense, isn't it? Improve many particle effects across the game. It's like, what? Oh well.
I mean, back there, but their visuals are scuffed as hell, right? Like it's not even 1% of what we have today. So they probably improved them many times over since. But it's good to know they're still making it a lot better.
Added third person. This is weird. Added third person animations for heavy weapons and pistols. Now, third person technically can refer to seeing another person.
Yeah, I think that's what it means.
It
considering
probably
there
does.
Isn't third person.
Well, unless there was, but that's not been mentioned at any other point. I hadn't heard about it. DOG story would have covered it. It wasn't in the mentioned in the last one of these videos. So I assume this has something to do with viewing your teammates like when you're downed, or just seeing them in general. So like basically animations.
And is heavy weapons and pistols, is that just referring to like gunner, or is that just what they called all the primaries and all the secondaries?
It's a good point, isn't it? It's weird because it's weird that what this either implies was left out, or what this implies as to how things were like named. Because is this just like the flamethrower and the grenade launcher and the minigun would have been heavy weapons. And the Sabata and the Bulldog would have been the pistols. It could be referring to that, but that's like a weird selection. Like, why were those things they didn't have these animations for at this point? Doesn't make a good deal of sense, but we have to assume that's the case based on what's being said. I haven't heard that they've ever called them anything other than your primary and secondary weapon, or your weapon and your sidearm is another way they could have been categorized. But this, to me, feels like it probably is specific. It's just confusing as to why those would have been what they needed to address. It just doesn't what?
Yeah.
I mean, the minigun, I suppose, is a bit odd considering they didn't really have like the gunsling animations, like any of them, and minigun didn't have a reload either. So what animations would they needed? Like just the barrel spinning? Did it not look like it was spinning to your teammates?
Probably
I'm pretty sure at this point it didn't spin at all. So
the next thing, several weapons had their models and skins.
Well, there you go. Maybe that's the minigun then. Maybe it spins now.
They probably did actually make the guns look good about now, which is good.
There could be crossover. Well, obviously there's crossover, but it could be crossover in the sense that several weapons, so not all of them. Maybe it's just the ones that this is talking about.
Yeah.
Because the change in model would require some changes in animations. So, yeah.
That is true.
Probably. Added angle indicator to tools that have angle restrictions. Now, this is weird because it says tools. As far as I know, at this stage, the only one was the zipline launcher.
Yeah.
And at the same time, that's the only weapon only tool that has angle restrictions at all, like restrictions. Obviously, the drills having the anglometer is useful, but they don't actually have restrictions. It's just like you have the full y-axis to work with. So what's going on here? I guess it is. I guess the zipline launcher is in there, but just Was there something else?
It's being vague.
Well, the turrets. But that's a different kind of thing. But I assume that's actually included. It's the turret, so you can see how much you can,
about like placing pipes in in oil.
What? They're talking about that? Is that? Oh yeah. Must be.
Yeah, refinery.
Citation needed.
Yeah.
I'm sure that mission type was in the game at this point.
Yeah.
Bro, they didn't have mission types at this point. Not really.
Yeah, they actually didn't.
Improved map generation speed. I guess that's good. Although a lot of them were still
I assume we'll probably see
fixed.
that quite often. Like, probably just get quicker and quicker.
As they got more complicated.
Ooh.
A first rough pass on the new biome system is in. Each location will feel more unique already, though we are still only at an early stage of implementation. So that's not...
Stage biomes. Probably...
Yeah.
Well, they might have maybe just like recolored the terrain.
Yeah, well,
I feel like that
before this, it was just they wanted each cave. It was a bunch of like either completely fixed levels or a few similarly structured levels that were still somewhat random. But I think the idea was they just wanted the levels to look different, but it wasn't necessarily considered. Like I don't think whole biomes were necessarily considered. It was just make each cave look different. But this is adding biomes probably led them towards having multiple missions in each setting. Yeah. So good work on that one. A rough pass though. I don't really know if they had the biomes named at this point either.
Doesn't look it.
No.
I think this next one has a weird implication that I assume you can elaborate on.
Yeah. Grappling hook now has a cooldown between each use and a softer landing. Well, how can I... Oh, I mean, you could just fly, I guess. That's the implication.
What, so it didn't have a cooldown? Or that it had just, like, uses? Like, an ammo?
No, I don't think it had that either.
Alright, so you could just infinite spam grapple hook.
Or it's possible that we'll see it have the infinite ammo added, actually. Then we'll know. But at this point, I guess you could just fly beforehand. I don't know about the softer landing part. It's a bit weird. I've seen that. I don't know if that's to do with maybe like if you grapple towards the ground, it's like you're falling. I don't know if that was maybe it was like that before. So if you grapple towards the ground, you just fucking die.
Which makes sense. But yeah, they changed that.
Although to be fair, at the time I would criticize this because that's not a very useful patch note. Like this is like speaking in tongues. That's not like technical information, is it? Does that mean they added like full damage reduction? Like
they wouldn't even like a normal company wouldn't be making patch notes for this early on in a game. Like
no, I suppose so.
Like but yeah, I guess they did kind of go through a whole mobility thing with the improved zipline grabbing.
Holding E while falling will ensure you grab any zipline that comes close to you. I'm not actually sure if this is how it must be how it works because it's how it works with pipelines. When I land on pipelines to just avoid fall damage, you can just hold X or hold interact, and it works that way. So I assume it's the same with the zipline. Then because I've only ever done it reactionarily, if that's even a word. I've never just been like falling and then holding X in case there was a zipline below me.
I don't see how they could have really have changed the zipline much from this. Or like always like this is like that's like it really. Grabbing the zipline and like the goddamn anglometer is like it.
Well, I don't know if they had the acceleration aspect added yet. I don't know.
I guess. They probably haven't had the mods on all them yet.
No. Oh yeah, they probably just didn't have mods on these at this point. I don't know.
Yeah.
Flares, however, new flare system. You now hold up to 4 flares in your inventory, slowly regenerating over time to use them. So this is exactly how flares work now. But between this and now, obviously, flare upgrades were added and removed. But at this point, at this specific point, they are exactly how they are now. But they just got they regressed eventually back to this.
Well, are you sure they didn't maybe like they could have been regenerating way like a lot slower now, or maybe even quicker? Like, well, yeah, but
this is still how it works. You have 4 and they regenerate over time.
Yeah.
So yeah, the numbers are almost definitely different. Even the velocity and angle at which you throw the flares will be different.
A very core part of the game. Like Molly just added to the game, just like casually.
Well, it was last time, wasn't it? Oh yeah, that's what you're saying. So we got one of those in there too. We'll see if there's something like that every time. Improved enemy pathfinder. I doubt that. They can now properly avoid and walk on non-terrain What? Oh. Huh? Yeah, this is confusing me a lot.
Avoid and walk on non-terrain enemy entities.
Yeah.
They could walk on each other and or avoid walking on each other.
But why would they need to do both? Why can't they just always face for each other? What? I'm confused.
And I think both of those not like they can't climb on each other now, right? Like that's not a thing. And I don't think I've really seen them avoid each other either.
Well, okay, so avoid the avoid part is confusing me, but I think this might actually have something to do with platforms. Because that's but that's not an entity either. So yeah, this is really weird actually. What's going on here? Drop pod? That's a big non-terrain entity. If that's considered an entity.
Which they, can walk on, so probably. Although avoid the drop pod, I guess they do also do that.
Yeah.
Or when they want to.
Oh,
yeah, I guess. Alright. Cam shake and sound levels on drop sequence have been tweaked.
Yeah, I think it used to be a lot louder and a lot shakier.
A lot worse.
It was. It was.
You're in a goddamn like storm, a hurricane, earthquake, just like
you're just like in a metal can being dropped down a mine shaft. It's like just bouncing around. It's just
smashed against the walls.
And then the next point is like basically the same thing. Attenuations on sounds have been tweaked, making the game less loud. That's lovely.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you gotta have balanced sound, kind of a thing. Not much more we can say on that.
Lots of bug fixes and smaller tweaks. Great. Where are those? All of that stuff meant to be in the patch. It's not very good patch notes, is it? As far as we know, though, they do list everything now, and I suppose you have to.
Yeah.
I think nothing's truly left now. Added invert mouse wheel and show help buttons options. Great. Fantastic.
I've never understood the inverse controls option.
So, about when it comes to inverted controls, a lot of games that have where you either fly, which is all the time, or have flying vehicles, they'll have the y-axis inverted. And it does actually feel more natural, even when you switch between the two. I think for most people that's how it works. Where you're like, if you're actually flying, you pull back the control to pull up. But that's like when it just comes to moving around as a person.
But I don't see why
it doesn't work.
A game like Deep Rock would need it.
No, some people just weird.
And like a lot of them do. I don't understand. Is it for like left-handed people?
No,
somehow.
What?
I don't know. They're backwards.
Anyway, fixed some weapons can shoot extra fast just after switching weapons. Bring this back as a perk, like quick hands, like and then you can fire off very quickly after switching. I don't know, something like that. Either way, that's a cool bug. Why did that even happen? That just doesn't make any sense.
I think this says something about the date this was released. First pass on controller support, only tested with the Xbox 360.
No, that's not anything to do with the date, because the Xbox One came out 3 years before this.
Yeah.
That's just because that's what they had. I guess they were all probably PC players, or just not Xbox players. So they just had a 360 wired. There is currently no aim assist and no acceleration on turning or other fancy features. Well, aim assist is weird because it doesn't feel like it has aim assist at all, the game, still. Which is a good thing, by the way. I think it does, but it's clearly not very strong. Heavy aim assist is not fun on a game where you face like hordes of enemies.
just pulls your thing around.
Yeah, you would just be constantly pulled around.
Yeah.
Legitimately.
You feel like a ragdoll. Like just.
Oh, what? Menus cannot yet be navigated with a controller. And to be fair, they never truly did that. It's just because it's just a cursor.
Yeah, that is true. Actually,
They didn't actually they didn't optimize it. Optimize would be you can just navigate like that. I tend to prefer cursors, I think, because it gives you more freedom. But at the same time, a menu system that can support just navigating, just going up and down, left to right, is probably better because that means it's probably got. It doesn't have an that means it doesn't have an excess, but at the same time, I think Deep Rock's got every option it should have and not really an excess. And a cursor is still probably the best way for it to be done.
Yeah.
In general,
but it is interesting that this decision is probably the reason why that's the case, or this consequence.
Face the consequences.
I think that's it.
So that was all beards. That was all about beards.
Yeah, all beards except for 90 to 95% of it.
And next week, well, not next week, the week after. So that does mean the next episode of this will be after the PC release of season 3.
Yeah.
It's also when they added the space rig.
Oh, I'm struggling to comprehend it without a space rig, but here we go.
I've seen it. It's weird.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for watching.
That was the update retrospective. Thank you, Ghost Ship Games.
Ooh.
What?
Yeah.
For your official blessing of this splendorous expedition.
Okay.
What?
See ya.
No, we have to say like and subscribe. All right, thank you. Bye. That's the best way to do it. All right. See you guys. Mwah.